Chaps, welcome back to SJMMA. So, doing some more matchmaking as per usual on this channel, but today I'm not going to do a card builder, I'm going to do an entire division. So we've got 12 great matchups at lightweight that could be made right now. Let's get straight into it. As you can see on your screen, we're starting big. We're starting with the return to lightweight for Max Holloway, which he has said is on the cards for him next. I think it's the right move. He should defend his BMF title against Dan Hooker. I can't stress enough how important for the career of Dan Hooker that win over Gamrot was in Australia. It was a brilliant performance, probably the best I've seen Dan Hooker look ever. Obviously after that, he did that interview with the Schmo in Marbella where he said he had some tasty names that could be next for him. And then the McGregor stuff came out, keep him away from Conor, because you can't trust he's going to show up. Dan Hooker, Max Holloway for the BMF title makes all the sense in the world. 25 minutes or less of absolute slugfestery, as I like to say, on the feet, in the main event, or even under another brilliant title fight of a massive card at some point in 2025. How could you not want that, people? Come on now. Up next, let's have a rubber match of Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. Now, I've been holding off, kind of getting behind this fight. It's been kind of floating around for a period of time, but Dustin Poirier said he only wants one more. I've been saying he should be fighting Colby Covington for a while, but with the announcement of him versus Joaquin Buckley, that's kind of off the table, at least for now. I think Gaethje, as well as Poirier, is coming towards the end of his MMA career. Poirier said he's only got one left, as we know. They're 1-on-1. They've both got a finish over each other. So, I think, as much as I don't particularly like non-title fight rubber matches, there are situations where they are viable. This would be one of them. Hey, here you go. Main event for the BMF title, Max Holloway, Dan Hooker. Co-main event, 5 rounds, Poirier, Gaethje 3. I mean, come on now, people. Am I not the best matchmaker you've ever seen in your life? I mean, seriously now. Up next, fresh off his win at UFC 309, Charles Oliveira will fight for the UFC Lightweight title next, all but confirmed by Dana White in the press conference in New York City. DuBlanc will get the opportunity to regain his lightweight title. Of course, he's already fought both Islam and Arman. The Islam fight was a bit of a walkover. The Arman fight was close. Some people will argue that he won that fight, but for me, Arman 2-1 was the right scorecard. Now, of course, if Arman can upset the apple cart and beat Islam Makhachev, the likelihood of them having their own trilogy match, of course, they've already fought before, very early in Arman's UFC career. If Arman wins this one and they're 1-on-1, they probably will do a trilogy. But assuming Islam wins, which he is likely to do, he's the favourite for a reason, then I believe this is the logical next step. If there is a trilogy, Oliveira may need to fight in between. Maybe he could fight the winner of Holloway Hooker and add the BMF title to his resume, maybe, who knows, but he will fight for the lightweight title against Islam or Arman Tsarukyan in the near future, I can guarantee you that. Next up, I spoke about this one yesterday when I was matchmaking UFC main events, Michael Chandler against the winner of the probably upcoming Renato Moicano versus Paddy Pimblett. Now, if this doesn't happen, the Moicano-Pimblett fight, then of course this isn't going to happen in the way that I've put it down on screen for you people, but if it doesn't, Chandler Moicano makes sense on its own. As I've already said, people, this idea and this concept was mentioned in yesterday's video. If you want a bit more of a deep down on it, then check out yesterday's video if you've not seen it. But yeah, I think where Michael Chandler is in his career, both Renato Moicano and Paddy Pimblett are exciting fighters with kind of big followings and personalities. If they can add a win over each other, that's only going to raise it to the point where Chandler would probably be interested in the idea of fighting one of them to kind of keep his career alive. So that's definitely what I think's on the cards. We're going to move on to another bloody rematch. There seems to be a lot of those floating around in this weight class at this moment in time, but I think Rafael Fiziev against Mateusz Gamrot 2 makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we've not seen Ataman since his injury in his first fight with Gamrot at the Apex over a year ago now. Gamrot himself is coming off that loss to Dan Hooker. They're both in a position where they've kind of been forgotten in the title picture. Rafael Fiziev was running through the lightweights until he ran into Justin Gaethje in London. And Gamrot was looking good as well, got a win over Tsarukyan in one of the most high-level MMA fights you'll ever see. Because that fight especially didn't have a definitive answer and a definitive winner, it makes all the sense in the world to run it back. Over 5 rounds in the Apex, maybe a 3-rounder if Fiziev doesn't really feel like coming back to a main event straight away. Either way, let's get a real answer on this one and let's see who's still clinging on to the edges of the title picture. I really enjoy these kind of matchups, people. Those guys who are coming off losses at the bottom of the rankings who need to defend their spot in the top 15 against a rising contender. And I think Jaylen Turner versus Felez Ziam is a wonderful fight for a couple of reasons. First of all, I've been really impressed with Ziam recently, especially last time out in his home nation of France. The knee he landed on Matt Frevola would have knocked out a rhinoceros. It was vicious, it was venomous, it was superb. And Jaylen Turner seems to strike well. It's not seems to, we know he struggles against heavy wrestlers. Ziam may use offensive grappling slightly, but for the most part it'll be two tall, long, dynamic strikers going at it. And I think if Turner can turn back someone like Ziam, he definitely deserves to be ranked in what is one of the most stacked weight classes, by the way, always has been. And if Ziam can beat Turner, he's right in there, looking at the likes of Pimblett, Moicano, maybe even his countryman Benoit Saint-Denis. But no, this is one of those fights that I think has to happen for the movement of a division. So make Félix Ziam versus Jaylen Turner right now. And speaking of Benoit Saint-Denis, let's do him and Grant Dawson. Why not? Obviously, recently Saint-Denis not had a particularly good run of it, getting knocked out by Dustin Poirier and then stopped by the doctor after 10 minutes against Moicano at home. Must have stung. Grant Dawson obviously had that really difficult night against Bobby Green, which I have to say I was not expecting. Bobby Green's not a one-punch knockout kind of guy, and Grant Dawson hasn't really shown any signs of weakness in the UFC to that point. So that was a shock, but he's rebounded well. Loved his microphone time after his last win. Great performance as well, vicious ground and pound. This is one of those fights a step above the likes of Turner Ziam. The loser of a fight like this would have to kind of do what Jaylen Turner's doing at the moment, kind of thing, if you know what I mean. So yeah, Grant Dawson against Benoit Saint-Denis on maybe the main card of a week pay-per-view, or maybe the co-main event of a fight night kind of spot. Makes a lot of sense for me. Let's book it. A fan favourite for a reason. King Green. Bloody hell. Yeah, him. Is still very much towards the top of the division. He's not ranked anymore, but he's very much on the cusp. He's on the periphery of those rankings, so to speak. And I think Ludovic Klein deserves the opportunity to fight somebody like that. His last fight against Roosevelt Roberts, I always knew he was going to win. Bit of a mismatch on paper. However, the fight against Moises before that was a really impressive win. Not many people beat Thiago Moises. He's a high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner at lightweight. Very, very good. And I think if you're Bobby Green, you're kind of winding down on your career. To turn back somebody like Ludovic Klein would be a bit of a fillip, to be honest. I think it makes a lot of sense. So let's see it. Let's move on to another stalwart of the upper echelons of the 155-pound weight class, Mr. Drew Dober, who's on a bit of a slide. I mean, that granite chin was broken by Gene Silva. To be fair, not going to really discredit him too much for that. Gene Silva is an animal, as we know. But somebody who I think could do with a step up in class is Ignacio Bahamondes. He's on a 2-fight win streak, recently got a finish at the Sphere very impressively against Manuel Torres. He's a dynamic, tall, long, rangy striker at lightweight. Not too dissimilar to like a Félix Ziam, but he's slightly more dynamic and unorthodox than Ziam, I would say. The last few fights on this video have all been about the idea of defending your position. I think Drew Dober has to do that for his spot at lightweight, which is a step below the likes of Bobby Green, who in turn is a step below Jaylen Turner. It's all about evolution and kind of chaining things together through a weight class in the UFC. Drew Dober, if he can beat Ignacio Bahamondes, stays relevant towards the top. If Ignacio can do a number on Drew Dober, especially in devastating fashion, he can look straight up towards the edge of those rankings. This is a fun one, people. If you know your MMA, you'd like the idea of this one. Mateusz Ribovich against Nazare Hakkaras. Now, Ribovich came in as a massive underdog against Oliveira recently and put on a contender for Fight of the Year and rightfully got the nod over 3 rounds. Brilliant fight. And if you look at Nazare Hakkaras, he's on a win streak of his own after dropping 2 to Green and Dan Hooker. Recently he's knocked out Jamie Malarkey and he beat Jared Gordon. These two are definitely on the rise, which at times is not good to match up people on the rise, but with these two, I think it makes sense. You've got 2 southpaw, heavy boxers, decent grappling on both sides, but it would be a striking match for the most part, I believe. Be a lot of fun. Let's see it. Let's see who can take the next jump up through the ranks at lightweight. Let's talk about another exciting stalwart of the lightweights, Matt Frevola, who was mentioned earlier in the video for all the wrong reasons after his head got sent to good bloody Knightsville by the knee of Ziam. I think he should fight Esteban Ribovich, who came in on the Sphere card, UFC 306, and beat the favourite in Daniel Zellhuber, who was very much kind of fancied not only to beat Esteban, but go on in the division. Argentinian MMA is definitely on the come up. I would say that Esteban is probably leading that, but you've also got Francisco Prado and Eileen Pelez as well, the twerking girl. So I think if he can get a win over Matt Frevola, rise his stock even higher and get closer up towards those high profile names, it can only be good for MMA in his region and of course his own career. So let's see it. And let's finish off with Jimmy Miller, beautiful people. He wants to make it all the way to the big 5-0, so I think Chase Hooper would be a brilliant fight. But I need to mention Clay Guida, because Hooper is fighting Guida very, very soon. And if Guida can pull off what would be an upset, a rematch with him and Jim, I can watch here, it would be alright. But I'd much rather see him fight Chase Hooper. The old versus new, passing of the torch kind of situation. I think it's the kind of fight that Jim would enjoy as well. I think he likes fighting the new Hungry Lions. He said it in interviews plenty of times. So yeah, Jim Miller against Chase Hooper is really what I'm saying here. But, you know, little mention of a Clay. If he can beat Chase, that still makes a bit of sense, I guess. Oof, there we go, people. That is 12 brilliant fights you can make at lightweight right now. I hope you enjoyed the more streamlined video. Normally I elongate and talk about the fights in more detail, but I realise that's not what matchmakers do. Matchmakers just make fights. I let you guys make the decisions on whether you like them or not. So, let me know what you think. Stay tuned for more, and take care.